Good morning. It is still April 4th. It's about 8:30 in the morning. I just kind of got back into the room after going down to get assignments, and I am currently staged and on hold, so I'm going to be holed up here in the room for a bit, waiting to get deployed. So I'm not sure where I'm going, but the phone will ring, I'll get a text, somebody will slide something under my door, and then I go where they send me. So I thought I would take some time and do another one of these. I might upload this differently, make it available differently. That way it can be maybe held in one spot where I can keep all this stuff together. Still trying to figure out how I'm going to do these videos. So it'll be a little bit of a process, but we'll figure it out. I'm already in scrubs. I got all my stuff together. I've got my go bag. I've got my respirator, and got my pins, my stethoscope. I got tape. You gotta have tape. ER nurse can do a lot with some self-tape. So pretty much whatever pops up, I'm ready to pretty much go. As soon as the door knocks. So let's talk about some other stuff. I was just looking through the news and saw several stories that I would normally type a lot about, but as I said in my last video, that I'm going to try to address some of this stuff differently. So here are some of the things that were on my mind that I was thinking about as I read through my news feed. There's a lot going around about the federal personal protective equipment, the PPE, that's being sent out to some of these places, and everybody's losing their mind because some of this stuff is quote-unquote rotten and out of date and expired. Guess what? That's part of one of the problems of storing personal protective equipment for a long period of time for emergency disaster use. You don't go through it regularly. You don't constantly turn over that inventory. This is stuff that is there sitting to use in an emergency. We are in an emergency. I have a lot of friends and coworkers that I love dearly who are freaked out at the fact that we don't have the PPE that we need. Some of this is going to come with the territory. We are using a lot of this stuff, our masks and our gowns, and we are using this PPE at rates that are 50 times, 100 times greater than we would normally use it. Even if your health system, your state, your particular floor manager is a genius and they can see 6 months into the future and they predict that this is going to happen, and nobody's ready for this. You can't order enough stuff, and you don't have enough space in your storeroom for your unit to put all of the stuff that you need to have for this event. Manufacturers don't manufacture this much stuff. There's not enough capacity. Maybe at a later date, I think there are some ways to address this and some things that can be done on a larger organizational level to address some of these needs, but that's a big picture kind of an issue. If the federal government were to say it is in our nation's best interest to have a really good stockpile of certain things, and we are going to store 20 million N95 masks, and we're going to store 15 million gowns, and we're going to store this many of this. That can be done, and it could be done in such a way that that stockpile rotates, and people, different health systems actually get some of their PPE that they normally use from that, and that stockpile is constantly rotated and updated, and that would be a very elegant way to do that. But that's socialism. It's socialism. It scares everybody to have that kind of federal involvement, that kind of governmental involvement in that sort of thing. It scares people. But guess what? It works. It's an elegant way to do this sort of thing and prepare for the absolute unknown in ways that are relatively simple, relatively elegant, and don't really cost a lot of money because you can constantly turn that stuff over and you can rotate it out. But in this contentious world of partisan politics that we live in, everything is political. So we seldom think about these things as national security issues and public health issues, and we need to think about that stuff going forward. We really need to be mindful. After this is all over, we need to be mindful. We need to have adult conversations about some of this stuff, and we need to discover what are the things that we can do together that cross party lines, that allow us to address some of these things that are absolutely foreseeable issues. Yes, this stuff only comes along once every 20 years, but when it happens, it's bad. The impacts are horrific, and with some foresight and some professional preparation, these issues can be mitigated, and they're not as bad. So that's one of the things with the PPE. Yeah, some of this PPE is not going to be what you want. It's not going to be perfect. We need to make do. We're going to be making masks out of cloth. We're going to be using those. We have to use a bandana. If I have to hop around a unit on a pogo stick wearing a leotard, I don't give a shit. We're here to take care of business. We're here to help people. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we signed up for. We knew that getting into this. We have all these people telling us we're heroes. We're great people because we're doing this incredible thing. We've been that all along, and we know that, and we need to act like it. We need to act like we are the people who show up and do the hard work when it has to be done. And we need to shut our holes, and we need to buckle down, and we need to do the best we can. And that doesn't say we put ourselves in harm's way, but we need to do the best we can given the resources we have, as efficiently and professionally as possible. And that's how I feel about that. I'm not going to make this a political issue, and I'm not going to point fingers. It is what it is. So we're going to take what we have, and we're going to do business. Another interesting thing, I'm kind of reflecting on a conversation I had yesterday driving in. One of my friends, Alex, I'm just going to say Alex. I'm not going to use last names. I'm not going to use too many identifiers, but a lot of folks in my friends list know who Alex is. He is here in the Northeast area, and he has professional municipal responsibilities. It is his duty to make sure that people are safe and taken care of, and so he has been involved in this response, and he has been in contact with local and regional health officials, and he has some level of frustration because some of the things that he wants to know and information that he is looking for, he can't get. And he's asking some of these people questions, and he does not have the information coming back to him that he might need, that he would want. And he told me, he's like, here's my list of questions, and I don't know if I can get this stuff answered. And it's really good questions. He's a sharp dude. And he knows what time it is, so he's asking me something. He's hey, you know what? These are some of these questions. Some of these I can answer. Some of these I can reflect on. Didn't really take time to do it at that point, but I'm going to do some of it now. But one of the questions that he was asking is, so some of this information that we're getting back about how many people are falling prey to this virus, and how do we know who is actually succumbing to this from this virus and who might be succumbing to it through other means? And it's a really good question, and it's valid. And if we're looking at this from a purely statistical point of view, and a purely analytical point of view, it's extra difficult because somebody gets suddenly ill and they pass away, and somebody says this was due to coronavirus. Do we know that? Maybe not with absolute scientific certainty, because this would mean that we have to do diagnostic study, we have to do some testing, we need to have, for lack of a better term, we need to let science prevail on that, and that would include an autopsy and things that we're really not doing right now, for the simple reason that we are under so much pressure and we're having so many people succumb so quickly that we have bigger fish to fry. So this is a real good question he had. But the thing is if we come at this from a different direction and we look at this from a pragmatic frontline healthcare worker point of view, I think that we have some answers for that. And to kind of explain my position in the story, I will say, let's say you're driving down the road and you're in your car. And suddenly your car, something horrible happens and you're on the side of the road and you're broken down. So we know that you're broken down. The question is how did you break down? In those few minutes leading up to that final event of your car breaking down, did you feel a certain vibration? Did you hear a tire going smack, 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 smack? Did the engine light come on? All of these context clues that we get in those few moments, to the aware, to the educated, to people who know cars, you have a lot of information. And you can say, I feel pretty confident that I picked up something in my tire and my tire blew up and it blew rubber all over the place and it ate up the suspension. Now it broke down because of that. You can figure that out. This is not that much different. We know where to start. We started with a person who was relatively health stable. Even if they are at risk and they're older or whatever their situation is, they are at their baseline. And then a week later, we have a person who has succumbed to this illness. In that time in between, we have all of those context clues. We have disease pattern, we have presenting symptoms, and so all of that gives us a really strong indication as to what got them to that final result. Is it 100% medical certainty? It is absolutely not. But at the same time, we're operating in a time and a space where medical certainty is not maybe going to be what it meant 6 months ago or a year ago. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So hopefully that provides a little bit of information there. So we pretty much know what's going on with a lot of these people, even if we don't have the same sort of standards that we might have applied to this a year ago or so. Another thing that we talked about was how do we prepare for all of this? He has a responsibility to prepare the things that he's responsible for these sorts of events. And professionally, he has also had the responsibility to prepare for disaster and disaster recovery. And in my history, in my professional history, I've always been interested in preparing for the worst. In my hobby side of things, between racing and racecraft and working in endurance racing, a lot of these things line up, and it's really interesting how some of the same lessons in all of these areas, in all of these different categories, how they line up, and they're very similar. And Alex talked about organizations that were professionally rivals of his who had very detailed disaster plans. In case of hailstorm, open up box A, remove form C3, look west, do a specific dance, point to the left and hop up and down 2 times. That's your disaster plan. It's all very specific. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I don't believe in that level of, very detailed. You have to sit there and you have to read instructions for 30 minutes to figure out how to take care of something when something goes bad. And his experience is the same. There's that old saying, I guess it goes into like boxing and martial arts and, war fighting, and, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And as soon as that happens, plans are off. It's, when you're in the middle of an emergency situation, when you are in the middle of a disaster, all those plans that are gone, they're right out the window. The only way to prepare, in my opinion, for these sorts of things is you need to have a solid foundation. You have to have a solid organization, and absolutely, without question, the number one thing that you have to have are people. People who are professional, they are dedicated, they dedicate their lives to being experts at being generalists. Some of the most skillful people in extraordinarily horrible situations, some of the paramedics, people in the fire service, fire, EMS, these are not people with PhDs, they're not people with master's degrees. But when it hits the fan, these folks are the absolute professionals in this sort of thing. You talk to emergency nurses, you talk to people who just do this stuff, and you run into the same sorts of personalities, the same sorts of people. And when you empower people who have the ability to think in dynamic and creative terms in stressful situations, and you allow those people to work with the resources they have in ways to meet a dynamic situation, good things happen. So for me, I think the answer is how do we prepare for this stuff? We invest in people. And we try to build systems that allow people to work with what they have to meet the needs of the situation. And that's harder to do. It's very easy to take a piece of paper and write down very specific instructions. And then when somebody says, well, what do you do? And you can say, oh, I have this 3-inch thick manual that is ready for anything. And that's comforting. It gives somebody something to point to. But, in the reality of these terrible emergent situations, it's a different thing. It's identify the dynamic things that are happening and mitigate that risk, stop the immediate danger, and then try to recover as quickly and efficiently as possible. So that should be the goal. So that's I think that's the sort of thing that we need to start working towards and preparing to get into. So sorry, I'm looking at my device here, seeing if there's anything popping up that I'm responsible for. So I'm going to be getting off here in just a second because I'm going to see if I can FaceTime with my boys. But expect some more of these. Ask me some questions. If there's anything I can talk about, I'm happy to do it. So I'll keep looking at things in the news, and I'll just get on here and just run my damn mouth. And maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. Maybe it gives me something to do to distract myself while I'm trying to do all this other shit. So take care. Love you all. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day, and be good to each other. Try to help each other, and we'll get through all this. So take care. Love you guys. Bye.